Waylon Jennings was an American singer, songwriter, and musician who was one of the pioneers of the outlaw country music movement. Jennings had a successful career spanning several decades and was known for his distinctive baritone voice and his blend of country, rock, and folk music. So sit back and relax as we look back at the legend and legacy of this amazing artist.
Before we begin, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you don't miss a single one of our upcoming videos.
Waylon Jennings was born on June 15, 1937, on the J.W. Bittner farm near Littlefield, Texas. His parents were Lorene Beatrice, née Shipley, and William Albert Jennings. The Jennings family lineage traced back to Irish and Black Dutch roots, while the Shipley lineage was linked to his great-grandfather, a farmer and lawman from Tennessee. Waylon also mentioned that, along the way, a lot of Indian blood mixed in, including Cherokee and Comanche families. Originally, Jennings's birth certificate bore the name Wayland, but it was changed after a Baptist preacher visited his parents and congratulated his mother for naming him after Wayland Baptist University in Plainview, Texas. Lorene Jennings, who was a member of the Church of Christ and had been unaware of the college, altered the spelling to Waylon. Reflecting on this in his autobiography, Jennings wrote, "I didn't like Waylon. It sounded so corny and hillbilly, but it's been good to me and I'm pretty well at peace with it now." Jennings's father later moved the family to Littlefield, where he established a retail creamery after working as a laborer on the Bittner farm. Jennings's musical journey started at the age of 8, when his mother taught him to play guitar using the tune 30 Pieces of Silver. He practiced on his relatives' instruments until his mother bought him a used Stella guitar and later ordered a Harmony Patrician. His early influences included Bob Wills, Floyd Tillman, Ernest Tubb, Hank Williams, Carl Smith, and Elvis Presley. Jennings began performing at family gatherings and played his first public concert at the Youth Center with Anthony Bonanno. He then made appearances at local Jaycees and Lions clubs and even won a talent show at Channel 13 in Lubbock singing Hey Joe. He frequently performed at the Palace Theater in Littlefield during local talent night. At the age of 14, Jennings auditioned for a spot on KVOW in Littlefield, Texas. Owner J.B. McShann, along with Emil Macha, recorded Jennings's performance and liked his style. McShann hired him for a weekly 30-minute program. After his performance on the show, Jennings formed his own band called the Texas Longhorns. However, their style, which was a mixture of country and western and bluegrass music, was not always well received. Jennings dropped out of Littlefield High School at the age of 16 after several disciplinary infractions and worked for his father in the family store, as well as took temporary jobs. He was determined to make music his career. The following year, he and the Texas Longhorns recorded demo versions of the songs Stranger in My Home and There'll Be a New Day at KFYO Radio in Lubbock. Jennings also worked as a truck driver for various companies, but quit after a minor driving accident due to his dissatisfaction with the owner. During this time, Jennings often performed at country radio station KDAV and met Buddy Holly at a Lubbock restaurant. The two would often meet during local shows, and Jennings became a regular attendee of Holly's performances on KDAV's Sunday Party. Jennings also started working as a DJ in 1956 at KVOW and eventually moved to Lubbock. His program ran in the afternoons and evenings, featuring country classics, current country, and mixed recordings that included early rock and roll stars such as Chuck Berry and Little Richard. However, Jennings was reprimanded by the owner for his song selection and was eventually fired after playing 2 Little Richard records in a row. During his time at KVOW, Jennings was visited by DJ Sky Corbin of KLVT in Levelland, who was impressed with his voice. Corbin invited Jennings to visit KLVT, and eventually Jennings took Corbin's position when it opened. The Corbin family later purchased KLL in Lubbock and changed the format to country, becoming the main competition of KDAV. Jennings was hired as the station's first DJ by the Corbins. Jennings, along with the other DJs, produced commercials and created jingles as their popularity grew. They also made public appearances, including live performances where Jennings showcased his talent. During one of these performances, Buddy Holly's father, L.O. Holly, approached them with Holly's latest record and asked them to play it on the station. L.O. mentioned that Holly was planning to produce artists himself, and Corbin recommended Jennings. After Holly returned from his tour of England, he visited KLLL and took Jennings as his first artist. Holly provided Jennings with new clothes and worked with him to improve his image. He arranged a recording session for Jennings at Norman Petty's studios in Clovis, New Mexico, where on September 10th, Jennings recorded the songs Joel Blown and When Sin Stops, Love Begins, with Holly, Tommy Allsup on guitars, and saxophonist King Curtis. Subsequently, Holly hired Jennings to play bass for him during his Winter Dance Party tour. Holly took a vacation with his wife in Lubbock and visited Jennings's radio station in December 1958 before their tour. Jennings and Sky Corbin provided hand claps for Holly's tune, You're the One. They then traveled to New York City, arriving on January 15, 1959, where Jennings stayed at Holly's apartment near Washington Square Park before a scheduled meeting at the General Artists Corporation headquarters, which was organizing the tour. They later took a train to Chicago to join the band. The Winter Dance Party tour began in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on January 23, 1959, but faced logistical problems due to the long distances between venues that had not been considered when scheduling the performances. Additionally, the unheated tour buses broke down twice in freezing weather, resulting in drummer Carl Bunch being hospitalized for frostbite. Holly made the decision to find an alternative mode of transportation. Before their performance at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa, Holly chartered a 4-seat Beechcraft Bonanza airplane for himself, Jennings, and Tommy Allsup to avoid the long bus trip to their next venue in Moorhead, Minnesota. Following the Clear Lake show, Allsup lost a coin toss and gave up his seat on the charter plane to Richie Valens, while Jennings voluntarily gave up his seat to J.P. Richardson, known as the Big Bopper, who was suffering from the flu and complained about the cold and discomfort on the tour bus due to his size. When Holly learned that his bandmates had given up their seats on the plane and had chosen to take the bus instead, a friendly banter between Holly and Jennings ensued, with Holly jokingly telling Jennings, "Well, I hope your old bus freezes up," and Jennings jokingly replying, "Well, I hope your old plane crashes." Less than 2 hours later, on February 3, 1959, Holly's charter plane crashed into a cornfield outside Mason City, Iowa, killing all on board. After hearing on the radio that Buddy Holly and his band had been killed, Jennings called his family and then called Sky Corbin at KLL from Fargo to confirm that he had not been aboard the plane. The General Artists Corporation promised to pay for first-class tickets for Jennings and the band to attend Holly's funeral in Lubbock, in exchange for them playing that night in Moorhead. After the first show, they were initially denied payment by the venue, but after Jennings's persistence, they were paid. However, the flights were never paid for, and Jennings and Allsup continued the tour for 2 more weeks, with Jennings as the lead singer. They were paid less than half of the original agreed-upon salary. Upon returning to New York, Jennings put Holly's guitar and amplifier in a locker in Grand Central Terminal and mailed the keys to Maria Elena Holly. He then returned to Lubbock. In the early 1960s, Jennings wrote and recorded The Stage, Stars in Heaven, a tribute to Valens, the Big Bopper, Holly, and Eddie Cochran, a young musician who died in a road accident a year after the plane crash. Jennings repeatedly stated for decades afterward that he felt responsible for the crash that killed Holly, and this sense of guilt led to bouts of substance abuse throughout his career. Joel Blown was released on Brunswick in March 1959 with limited success, and Jennings returned to KLLL, but his performance at the station worsened due to the death of Holly. After being denied a raise, Jennings left the station and briefly worked for the competition, KDAV. Due to his father-in-law's illness, Jennings had to shuttle between Arizona and Texas, while his family lived in Littlefield. In 1972, Jennings's recording contract was coming to an end after the release of Ladies Love Outlaws. He contracted hepatitis and was hospitalized, feeling sick and frustrated with the Nashville music industry, and considering retirement. Albright visited him and convinced him to continue, suggesting he hire Neil Reshin as his new manager. Meanwhile, Jennings requested a $25,000 royalty advance from RCA Records to cover his living expenses during his recovery. On the same day he met Reshin, RCA sent Jerry Bradley to offer Jennings $5,000 as a bonus for signing a new 5% royalty deal with RCA, the same terms he had accepted in 1965. After reviewing the offer with Reshen, he rejected it and hired Reshen. Reshen started renegotiating Jennings's recording and touring contracts, and at a meeting in a Nashville airport, Jennings introduced Reshen to Willie Nelson. By the end of the meeting, Reshen had become Nelson's manager as well. Jennings's new deal with RCA included a $75,000 advance and artistic control. In 1973, Nelson found success with Atlantic Records and was based in Austin, Texas, attracting rock and roll fans to his shows and gaining press attention. Atlantic Records made a bid to sign Jennings, but Nelson's rise to popularity persuaded RCA to renegotiate with Jennings before losing another potential star. In 1973, Jennings released Lonesome, Ornery, and Mean and Honky Tonk Heroes, the first albums recorded and released under his creative control, marking a major turning point in his career. He followed with more hit albums, including This Time and The Ramblin' Man, both released in 1974. The title tracks of both albums topped the Billboard Country Singles chart, with the self-penned This Time becoming Jennings's first #1 single. Dreaming My Dreams, released in 1975, included the #1 single Are You Sure Hank Done It This Way, and became his first album to be certified gold by the RIAA. In 1976, Jennings released Are You Ready for the Country, which reached #1 on Billboard's Country Albums chart for 10 weeks and was named Country Album of the Year in 1976 by Record World magazine. It was also certified gold by the RIAA. In 1976, RCA released the compilation album Wanted, The Outlaws, featuring Jennings, Willie Nelson, Tom Paul Glaser, and Jennings's wife, Jessie Coulter. The album was the first country music album to be certified platinum. Jennings continued to release successful albums in the late 1970s, including Ol' Waylon and Willie, both featuring duets with Nelson that produced hit singles. He also released his first greatest hits compilation in 1979, which was certified gold the same year. Jennings's career diversified in the late 1970s as he joined the cast of the CBS series The Dukes of Hazzard as the balladeer, and wrote and sang the show's theme song Good Old Boys, which became a major hit. In the mid-1980s, Jennings, along with Johnny Cash, Chris Christopherson, and Willie Nelson, formed the successful group The Highwaymen. Despite some sales decline in the 1980s, Jennings continued to release albums, including a gold album, What Do You Do, with Willie Nelson in 1982. In 1985, Jennings joined with USA for Africa to record We Are the World, but left the studio due to a dispute over the song's lyrics. He then signed with MCA Records and released the album Will the Wolf Survive in 1986, which peaked at #1 on Billboard's Country Albums chart. Jennings was married 4 times and had 6 children. He married Maxine Carroll Lawrence in 1956 at age 18, with whom he had 4 children: Terry Vance, 1957-2019, Julie Ray, 1958-2014, Buddy Dean, born 1960, and Dina. Jennings married Lynn Jones on December 10, 1962, adopting a child, Tommy Lynn. They divorced in 1967. He married Barbara Elizabeth Roode the same year. He composed the song This Time about the trials and tribulations of his marriages and divorces. Jennings married country singer Jessie Coulter in Phoenix, Arizona, on October 26, 1969. Coulter had a daughter, Jennifer, from her previous marriage to Dwayne Eddy. The couple had a son born in 1979, Waylon Albright, known as Shooter Jennings. In the early 1980s, Coulter and Jennings nearly divorced due to his abuse of drugs and alcohol. In 1997, after he stopped touring, Jennings earned a GED at age 60 to set an example about the importance of education to his son, Shooter. Jennings began using amphetamines during his time living with Johnny Cash in the mid-1960s. He later described how pills were the artificial energy on which Nashville ran around the clock. In 1977, Jennings was arrested by federal agents for conspiracy and possession of cocaine with intent to distribute. A package containing 27 grams of cocaine sent to Jennings by a colleague in New York was reported to the Drug Enforcement Administration by a private courier. When the DEA and police searched Jennings's recording studio, they found no evidence as Jennings had disposed of the drug while waiting for a search warrant. The charges were eventually dropped and Jennings was released. This experience inspired Jennings to write the song, "Don't You Think This Outlaw Bit's Done Got Out of Hand." During the early 1980s, Jennings's cocaine addiction escalated, and he claimed to have spent $1,500 a day on his habit, leading to financial ruin and debts totaling $2.5 million. Despite his efforts to repay the debt through additional tours, his work suffered, and his tours deteriorated. Jennings eventually leased a home in Phoenix to detox from cocaine for a month, with the intention of using it more responsibly afterward. In 1984, he finally quit cocaine, citing his son's shooter as his main motivation for doing so. Decades of heavy smoking and drug use took a significant toll on Jennings's health, compounded by issues such as obesity and a poor diet, resulting in him developing type 2 diabetes. Despite quitting cocaine in 1984, Jennings continued to smoke heavily, consuming up to 6 packs of cigarettes a day. In 1988, he finally quit smoking as well. However, his health continued to decline, and he underwent heart bypass surgery that same year. By 2000, his diabetes had worsened, leading to reduced mobility and forcing him to curtail most of his touring. In an effort to improve blood circulation in his left leg, Jennings underwent surgery in the same year. However, in December 2001, his left foot had to be amputated at a hospital in Phoenix. On February 13, 2002, Jennings passed away in his sleep at his home in Chandler, Arizona, due to complications from diabetes. He was 64 years old. He was laid to rest at the City of Mesa Cemetery in nearby Mesa, and at his memorial service on February 15th, Jesse Coulter sang "Storms Never Last" as a tribute.